All right, let's dive into a really big shift in education. We're going to talk about moving away from just covering the material to actually designing for deep, real student understanding.
You know, this quote from Jay McTighe, one of the big thinkers in this area, just hits home for so many teachers. I mean, who hasn't felt that pressure? Just got to get through the material, right? Marching from chapter to chapter. But when we get stuck in that coverage mindset, real learning can kind of get left in the dust.
So, that begs the question, right? If just plowing through the textbook isn't the answer, what is? How do we actually plan our lessons so that learning sticks around for the long haul?
Well, the answer comes from a framework called Understanding by Design, or UBD for short. And its main idea is powerful because it feels a little backwards at first. To plan a great journey, you have to start by knowing exactly where you're going.
And that's the whole heart of backward design. Instead of starting with, your favorite activities or the textbook chapters, you start by asking a totally different question. By the end of this, what do I really want my students to understand and be able to do? Once you know that, everything else just falls into place.
It all breaks down into 3 stages. First, you pinpoint those end goals, your desired results. Then, stage 2, you figure out how you'll know they got there. What's the proof? What's the evidence going to look like? And only then, after all that, do you get to stage 3, planning the actual lessons and activities. See, it totally flips the old way of planning on its head.
Okay, so we're starting with our desired results. But what kind of results are we even talking about here? This gets us to a really, really important distinction.
Look, the end game isn't just about kids knowing a bunch of facts they can spit back out on a test. The real goal is for them to develop this deep, flexible understanding that they can actually use in new, unfamiliar situations. That ability to apply what you've learned, that's called transfer. And honestly, it's the holy grail of education.
This learning to drive analogy just nails it. Think about it. Acquisition. That's like memorizing traffic signs and the rules of the road. Important stuff, for sure. But then there's understanding. That's the bigger idea of defensive driving. You're not just following rules, you're anticipating what other drivers might do. And then you have transfer. That's the real test. That's when you hit a patch of black ice or get caught in a sudden hailstorm, and you have to apply everything you know to a situation you've never faced before. That's what we're aiming for.
Okay, so we know our destination, transferable understanding. But how do we build a road that every single one of our students can travel on, no matter who they are? That's where another game-changing idea comes into play. It's called Universal Design for Learning, or UDL. And the big idea here is that instead of waiting for students to hit a roadblock and then trying to fix it, we build a flexible curriculum from the very beginning that removes those barriers before they even show up. It's all about being proactive.
This slide has the absolute perfect analogy for UDL, curb cuts. You know, those little ramps on sidewalks? They were originally designed for people in wheelchairs. But who else uses them? People with strollers, kids on bikes, travelers pulling luggage. Literally everyone benefits. That's UDL in a nutshell. When you design for learners who might be on the margins, you almost always end up making learning better and easier for everybody in the room.
UDL really boils down to 3 core principles. First, providing multiple ways for engagement. This is the why of learning. How do we get students excited and invested? Second, multiple ways of representation. This is the what of learning. Presenting information in different ways, not just text on a page. And finally, multiple ways for action and expression. The how of learning. Giving students different options to show you what they know.
So, we have these 2 huge, powerful ideas. Backward design to give us our structure and universal design for learning to make sure it's accessible to everyone. But what does this actually look like when the rubber hits the road? Let's check out a real-world example.
The unit planners from the International Baccalaureate, or IB programs, are just a fantastic example of putting these theories into practice. They don't just pick one idea. They've created this really smart hybrid that blends a few of the best approaches out there.
So, when you look under the hood of an IB planner, its DNA is pure backward design. You start with the end goal, but then it layers in this intense focus on big, conceptual ideas and is built from the ground up to spark student curiosity and inquiry. It's a really powerful mix. It changes the teacher's main question from what activities am I going to do tomorrow to what deep understandings will my students build through their own investigations. It's not just a plan, it's a launch pad.
And this is just so important to remember. A really well-designed planner is not just a piece of paper you fill out to prove you're doing your job. No way. It's a thinking tool. It's a dynamic,
living guide that helps you craft amazing learning experiences and then make them even better next time.
Which I think brings us to the big final question we should all be asking ourselves. When we sit down to plan, are we creating a true roadmap? A clear path that guides our students all the way to a destination of real understanding? Or are we just hitting them a list of stops along the way and kind of hoping they figure out the journey for themselves? It's something to think about. Thanks so much for joining me.